everybody, welcome back to Book Brain. Today I'm going to be reviewing another Blake Crouch book because he's kind of been my most recent favorite author that I've found. So I've been reading lots of his books. This one is called Dark Matter. That's what the cover looks like. This one was very good. I'll just start off by saying it was great. I feel like I don't read a lot of books that aren't great. So maybe I'm just good at picking them out by the backs of the cover, or there's just a lot of great authors. But either way, this one was another excellent read. So I'm just going to do a little bit of a overview of the book. So if you are planning to read this and don't want any kind of spoilers at all, maybe just come back and read it after you've read it and just leave a comment of what you thought of it once you've read it. Otherwise, stick around if you want to hear about it anyways. So the main character is named Jason. He lives in America with his son and his wife. Regular life, professor at the university. He teaches some like science thing. And one night he goes out to get some ice cream and is attacked by a man and wakes up, and he kind of has to go through this problem of the world he wakes up in isn't quite right. Main thing is he is the famous scientist who created this machine that goes through different dimensions. Like how I pictured it when I was reading about it is like a CT scanner machine, just like a round machine with a door that you go in. Once you're in there, it's kind of like a dimly lit corridor that's kind of got tan walls, and you either have the option of walking down the corridor and there's doors on either side that you open, or to go to these different dimensions. But then sometimes I also picture it, depending on what point it is in the book, I pictured it as just this kind of round room that's quite small and there's no door. Because if I remember correctly, at one point in the book, the machine doesn't have any door options. That's how I pictured it in my head based on how it's described in the book. So he created this machine that you can go to different dimensions in. The problem with that, though, is that he's not in his original dimension and he doesn't know how he got there. But it turns out that Jason A, we'll call him, is the main character, Jason A. Jason A, he's walking to get ice cream for his family when the Jason who created this machine in the other universe uses that dimension machine to come to Jason A's universe and attacks him and switches places with him. So Jason A is now in the world where he's the famous scientist who made this machine, even though he isn't. People think he is. And Jason B has swapped places with him because he wants the wife and family, because he realizes it's a better life. So they swap places, and Jason A now has to get back to his original timeline. But the problem with that is he doesn't know exactly how to find the right world. So the majority of the book is spent with him trying to find the right version of his wife and his original life without getting lost or stuck or dying in these different dimensions. At one point he runs into another woman named Amanda who ends up coming with him through the dimension machine, and I can't remember exactly what happens to her, but she doesn't make it to the end. So it's really dangerous because there's like, for example, one area they end up in is just this like frozen wasteland, and they kind of get a little bit lost from the machine, have to go back, and the machine itself is also dangerous because at one point there's no doors and they're just stuck inside it, and they have no options of what to pick to get out. So they are basically almost starving to death in there. But then it all somehow works out. You'll have to read the details in the book. But eventually, Jason A gets back to the planet where Jason B has stolen his family. And he's like, yep, we're in the right spot. Perfect. However, when he goes to get the family back, he realizes he's made a very big mistake. He didn't do it on purpose, but it happened anyways due to how the machine works. So the machine has created, by traveling through the different dimensions, Jason A has created different versions of himself that have also used the dimension machine to get back to the wife that they think is theirs. So Jason A, he uses the machine, he's the main character, he comes back, finds Jason B has stolen his family. He's gonna get them back, working on that project. Meanwhile, there is Jason A.1, A.2, A.1000 of all these Jasons that are coming back to find the wife who they think is also their wife, because Jason A.1 maybe is like Jason A went right, Jason A.1 went left, and they just split off at that point and then came back to their wife to find her at the original planet. So Jason A.1 and A. however many there are still going back to their home planet, but they are just slightly different than Jason A because of some smaller or big decisions that Jason A made that led to a different alternate path that they took, that maybe they ended up, I think there's one part where it kind of talks about one of them, say Jason A, he comes back to his planet, he's here. Jason A.1 at this last stop they took actually had to do one more stop in this other planet that's like a fire planet, and he gets almost burnt alive, but then he comes back to this planet eventually. So Jason A.1 maybe's half burnt, so that's the only difference between them, is that one last final decision. So it makes you think all of these Jasons are from this home planet. They don't have another planet to go back to. This wife is their wife, but they have just taken a different path to get back to her. So Jason A just happens to get back to her first, and then he gets his family. They go up to this cabin out in the wilderness to escape Jason B. When they realize, oh, Jason A.1 exists, he's coming here to get his wife back. That is his wife and son, but he's not the original version, I guess, is how you describe it. Yeah, but it's just it makes you think about it, because you have to decide if you think Jason A is actually the right Jason, and how does his wife know that's the right Jason? But she does, because when she's living with Jason B, the guy that switched the bodies around, when she's living with Jason B, it talks about her knowing things aren't quite right. Like, well, he used to sleep on his back, now he sleeps on his side. He used to cross his hands like this, and now he crosses them like this. Anyways, the wife doesn't feel quite right about her husband, who is actually Jason B. But once Jason A comes back and finds her, she's like, yep, this is the right Jason. And then they get kind of hunted down by the Jason 8.1, 8.2, and Jason A has to kill off a couple of the other Jasons to save his wife. And they realize this planet that they're on, there's going to be thousands of Jasons coming to find the wife. I can't even remember her name. I really should. But I'll find it because I feel we are just calling her the wife. Okay, his son is named Charlie, and his wife is named Daniela. There we go. So all these Jasons are going to just keep coming to try to find Daniela, because that is their wife up until, and it still is, I guess, but they're just not the same exact version that got there first, basically. So they have to figure out a new plan, and they decide that they're going to go back into the Dimension Machine, and they are going to pick a whole new world. So they go back to the warehouse where the machine is, and there's a whole bunch of Jasons in this warehouse that have just emerged from the machine because they are a little bit behind everybody else in the time that they get there. So that's one of the parts I don't like in the book, because basically Jason A is like, this is my original wife, she's my wife and son, and it's not good for the other versions of me to be destroying her and stalking her and scary and whatever. He has this kind of speech thing to them, if I remember right, and they're just kind of like, yeah, you're right. And I'm like, I feel like that's just this whole, it's a story, but I feel like that part's kind of unrealistic, because that is still, Daniela is still the wife for all those different versions of him, except for Jason B, and maybe like if there's a Jason C or D that got mixed up in there too. So she is the wife of all those Jasons, but is it the right Jason that she goes with? Jason A. That just happens to be the one that you follow along with, so it is kind of the right one. It gets very complicated throughout the story with all the different versions of him. But anyways, all these Jasons basically are just like, yeah, that's fine, I guess you're the right version. And Jason A, Daniela, and his son all are able to enter the Dimension Machine, and they let the son pick a different dimension to go in. They just show up there and they're just gonna live their life that way instead of on their original planet. And it just, I feel like this is kind of a theme of the author. Has a very excellent story from the very beginning. You're instantly hooked on the book. Very complicated, convoluted story that is very interesting. But then I feel like he kind of has not quite as like epic of an ending, because the whole book is really excellent, and then the endings often, I feel like the ones I've read of his, I've been like, well, I guess that solves the problem, but it doesn't really seem like as mind-blowing as the rest of the book. But I guess that happens if you write like this much of your book is fabulous and perfect and you're just blown away the whole time, and then the last chapter is just the resolution, which I guess isn't as exciting. But yeah, that's how it goes. Hopefully that made sense, talking about all the different dimensions of the same person, because it really makes you think about it when you're reading it. It's easy to, I found it easy to follow when you're reading it, because it doesn't, you're always following Jason A, because it talks about he's a first person storyteller of this character. So you yourself are Jason A. So it makes it easy to differentiate between the different dimension versions of the characters. So that is good that way. Reading is fairly easy. But once you start to think about the different dimensions and stuff, it's like, it gets wild if you really think about it. So I would recommend reading this book, making your friend read it so that you can talk about it with each other and talk about all the different like possibilities and outcomes and things like that, because my sister read it and I thought it was fun to like talk about how everything was so complicated with the dimensions and stuff and all the different things about it. I thought that was fun. So find a friend to read it with you. Do a little book club with them or something, because it's just one of those books you want to talk about with people, obviously. So that's why I'm talking about it on here. I would love if you left a comment and told me if you've read it, and just share some thoughts about it in the comments. I'm just curious because I like talking about it and I like hearing other people's opinions on if they thought, like, did the right Jason get back to the wife, or, which I think that it was the right Jason. It's yourself as the reader. But it's just interesting, like, how did the wife know that was the right Jason, and all the different theories of it. That is interesting to me to read about. So if you have any thoughts or input on the book, I would love if you left a comment and a like for the video if you did like it, or if you like the book. And hopefully you have it added to your little repertoire of reading material. In the meantime, I have some other books to be reading, so I will see you in my next video. Bye.